This is your City of Fairhope Development Review Committee, and today is Wednesday. What is today's date? Today is November 6th. November 6th. The Development Review Committee, this is not a Planning Commission meeting. We'll give our standard informational disclaimer. This is not a Planning Commission meeting. It's not a City Council meeting. This is a staff review of planning-related cases. We conduct this meeting so the benefit of the applicant and the applicant's design professionals can address city staff all at once, various departments, public works, utilities, and planning staff at once. For the benefit of the public, we record these meetings, and the public is welcome to attend these meetings. We don't conduct a public hearing, so we don't directly address the public in this meeting, but it is available so that way anyone interested in upcoming developments can hear about the development in advance. The items that we're discussing today are proposed for the December 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. We'll begin with a zoning change case, and that is ZC 19.16, a request by the Retirement Systems of Alabama. And Mr. Mike Jeffries, city planner, is handling this case. And then we have Mr. Scott Hutchinson with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood on behalf of the applicant. Take over, Mike.
Morning, Scott. Thank you, Beeford. As you had mentioned, this is a zoning case of approximately 7.23 acres of unzoned Baldwin County property to the tourist resort zoning district of City of Fairhope. And it's actually an amendment to the TR district, adding some more TR property to the existing RSA's TR district that they currently have. This case was heard and public hearing opened on the Planning Commission meeting on Monday. The Planning Commission is going to look at the TR district as it is a little unique and different from our normal zoning code. They wanted to familiarize themselves with it a little bit more and allow staff to do likewise. So that case will be back on the December 2nd agenda, and we will open that up, continue the public hearing, give comments and things of that nature for that. Did you have any other comments or concerns, anything on that, Scott?
Not me, thank you.
Okay. Staff, any questions or concerns at this point in time?
I will kind of put in record that I think a lot of the concerns are covenants based, that the city does not have an enforcement procedure over. So when we review this, I think we will be looking at as its applicability to our code and alternative options if we don't allow this, and that does not waive any covenants. That's just not our role in enforcing those. So just to put that out there in the public and make sure everybody knows that's not what the city's charged with doing.
Sure. And the notification issue too, I think the city probably needs to be prepared, just like we would about all the members of Lakewood needing to be notified versus property owners.
Right.
That's like being next to a church and expecting you to notify every church member.
Sure.
It's not realistic.
Yeah, and I think there was a reference in our code to that, and it's pretty clear what our interpretation of that is, that's single tax property members. You know, that section of our code for notifications, leaseholders,
right,
is unique to Fairhope. Exactly. And the single tax properties, and that does not mean just golf course members on that notification. So that's to be clear.
10-4.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have a complementary case to ZC 19.16. So the next item on our agenda, and this would be the first appearance of this case, is SD 19.41. And this is the complementary subdivision case that complements the zoning change we discussed previously. And so we'll give it back to Mr. Mike Jeffries.
Again, as Beaver said, this is the subdivision case. This is a 10-lot subdivision that is being requested on the property. Again, it's across from Poffner Place and Point Clear Court on Battles Road, approximately that 7.23 acres. Reviewing the plans, just kind of technical deals. The only thing I really saw, there was a note on the BMP plan that notes the 13-day rule per ADM. City of Fairhope has a 10-day rule. We just reflect that on that BMP plan as well. the lot sizes, everything is kind of contingent upon the zoning change to the TR district. Comparing the subdivision with the TR district, it meets the minimum lot standards for the TR district, so there's no issues there. Looking at the drainage is capturing everything on-site, off-the-site, and is being contained on either on that site or continues on to other RSA-owned properties and then continues on to the natural water source. Richard, I know you looked at the drainage and everything looked to be to par on that?
Yeah, and Scott, this is a tough one right now because of the chicken and the egg kind of syndrome. This is kind of a tough one now because there are things based upon TR district. But the good news is the drainage is not affected by the zoning, and it all looks great. I mean, your LID, your TSS removal, everything, no problem there. Things to consider or ponder, depending on what the outcome of zoning is right now, I know that typically RSA has had these as their private roads that are gated. If it's not in the TR district, then our subdivision regulations say no gated roads, private is still something to be discussed, but you still have to build the public standard. The right-of-way width proposed is 40 feet. I thought that's probably reflective of what the TR district has allowed, but if it's not in the TR district, then we have to look at what's the minimum right-of-way requirement, which I want to think it's 50. So that's, that does change the design there. And then
Which is one of our arguments for wanting it not in the county but in the city to allow us to go there right of ways and save a few more trees.
Yeah, and for 10 houses, that's plenty of right-of-way. And then the pavement width, I think you got 18 feet, which I'd have to go back and look at if I think that's acceptable.
I think that's
that's
the minimum
fine.
on a 50-foot right of way as well.
I'm just saying that my concern is that if based upon TR, we're completely compliant. If TR doesn't happen, then we have to either look at waivers or something of that nature. But as far as the construction, design, all that, it's fully compliant. I mean, y'all are actually going above and beyond because y'all have got the binder and a wearing, proposing the road construction and the drainage, I think, is well done and very compliant with that. So really, again, the only thing that may make things have to be considered is if the chicken doesn't get here before the egg.
Gotcha.
So,
And to elaborate a little bit on the relationship between the zoning case and the site plan, this TR district is very unique, and some of the things that the city has an opportunity to negotiate can only happen at the zoning change. And without a site plan or without the plat to review, it's hard to tie those together. But since they're on the same case, some of the conversations we've had internally, and you may want to check with your client to see if there would be a problem with this. In the low-rise district within the TR, there's a list of allowable uses. So we would probably recommend, and we can talk about this further between now and the meeting, but we would probably recommend that this limit to single family and maybe even the lots as drawn, because I think if approved just blindly to TR district low rise, you can limit that you can have 2,100 square foot lots. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, that is correct. With a plethora of different uses besides just a single family residential. This district was designed for flexibility to have different districts that were throughout the center of it. And I have an extra just for some of the uses that are allowed. Condominiums, multifamily units, apartments, patio homes, duplexes, cluster homes, swimming pools, tennis courts, tennis and pool equipment. They're just all kinds of different uses. So part of and I think I mentioned that in the recommendation at the Planning Commission was probably approval that it's limited to single-family dwelling units. Just puts a layer of protection on what that development is proposed and that it stays as is proposed. If this subdivision wasn't to go through and that property did get rezoned and this application was withdrawn, well then we have a TR district piece of property where you said you're going to come in with 2,100 square foot lots. You could come in and just want to put in a new tennis court, could come in and put duplexes in, and just the limits are
A plethora of uses.
So we can skin that cat two ways, either limit it on the application coming in on the plat or we can make that a recommendation of approval on the subdivision or the zoning case.
Probably be better on the zoning, or either one's okay with us. Just thinking out loud, that may help it be more acceptable on the zoning level.
Okay.
'Cause that's where it's all gonna hit the fan with,
Because there's no site plan in the zoning case, we'll have to refer to the subdivision case and make that a condition. And we'll figure out that mechanics of how
yeah,
that operates.
There's no objection to that.
Okay.
I'd say, I think we could probably insert the proposed site plan as an exhibit, that it shall closely mimic Exhibit B
Yeah.
for,
Almost like we would a PUD.
Pseudo-PUD, yeah.
Very similar to a PUD,
Exactly.
yes.
correct. Just some other quick comments that I had. I just wanted to note that, the tree protection will be required as the subdivision regulations require it. And even if it was to stay in the county, those same subdivision regulations would apply. If it does get annexed into the city and rezoned to either TR or to R1 or to anything, the tree and landscape ordinance would also apply to this development. So we'd have the tree protection plan is in both of them. They're pretty similar to each other. The common area that is proposed, I really like it's a large common area that kind of looks like you circled the bulk of the trees that were on the site and are trying to preserve those as best as possible. Other than that, I believe that, if there is any other small conditions, right now I'm looking at probably a conditional approval with this being rezoned to TR. So if the rezoning application was not to go through, then the subdivision application would fall through as well.
And Mike, if you didn't illuminate this earlier, just for benefit of anyone watching, just if you would illuminate the subdivision versus zoning change approval, and who's the approving authority for each one.
So we'll start with the zoning change case, since that was first on the agenda. It goes through a staff review. Staff gives a recommendation to the planning commission. The planning commission makes only a recommendation to the city council. It is put on the next available city council meeting. And once there's any drawings that have been redone, or I guess there's not any drawings with this, but it goes to city council. City council will look at it. They typically lay it over one cycle, the second cycle, and they open up the public hearing on the first cycle. The second cycle, public hearing is not open. It is a time for the council. They can talk, ask the applicant, ask staff, any further questions that they may have had. And at that time is when they take action to either approve or deny the zoning change application. The subdivision does not go through city council. It goes through planning commission, and planning commission can either approve, deny, or request to table for further information if needed. And those are the two differences between the zoning change and a preliminary site plan or preliminary subdivision.
Exactly, and thank you for illuminating that, Mike. And one thing too, for any citizens watching to understand too, is that once the planning commission acts upon a zoning case, it's not immediately on the very next council meeting agenda. Due to the advertising requirements, it can take several weeks for that case to appear on the city council agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to note for those advertisements, because we're getting close to Thanksgiving and close to Christmas, with state law and going to the local newspapers, we have to abide by whatever days that they are advertising. If the holiday gets in, sometimes that will throw it off a few days, and those few days can push it back a cycle or two cycles, would make it to the city council to follow the right advertisement for that.
And also, from time to time, the city council may have a need to reschedule a meeting for various reasons, and sometimes that can have an effect as well.
Yep.
So the point to take away is that it can be several weeks from between meetings. Okay, are we ready to move on?
That's all I have, unless anybody else has any questions, Scott, or Dan?
Good, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Y'all have a good day.
Scott, thank you.
Hey,
So,
Scott, can you wait about 5 minutes, Ron, for Jessica and ask you a question about Restore?
Yeah.
Okay.
and so we'll move on to case number SD 19.42, and this is a request of Glenn and Sally Boone for plat approval of a two-lot minor subdivision, Wildwood at Montrose, and Ms. Samara Wally, city planner. And then we have Mr. Seth Moore joining us on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, staff. Good morning, Mr. Moore. As Buford stated, this property is located at the southwest corner at the intersection of Adams Street and 2nd Street, and it is a 2-lot minor subdivision. Just to kind of verbalize some of the comments that we spoke about after our initial review, we are going to need that preliminary plat application checklist, Mr. Moore. Also, letters from the utility service providers just confirming the availability. I know that there was conversation about the flow model data, and Mr. Peterson may have more information for you there, but that was a requirement. The next thing, pedestrian circulation plan is not going to be required, but if there's sidewalks on the site, they need to either be illustrated or a sidewalk waiver will be required. And then we're going to need the drawings digitally. Some additional comments that I had, the existing dwelling needed to be illustrated. I know that you just gave me the revised of that. Coordinate with the county to verify your points of access. And the drainage and utilities easement that is shown on the perimeter of the lot 1 and 2, they need to be 15 feet. On the initial drawing, it was illustrated as 10. And so,
Right. Yeah, we don't have any problem really with any of these points. I know they will be asking for a sidewalk waiver
mhm.
because there aren't any sidewalks other than on Main Street in
Yes, sir.
Montrose. You know, they don't have an objection to putting in a sidewalk, but, you know, when you have a sidewalk and you have nothing on either side or no connections, that might be a problem, I don't know.
But the planning commission is very aggressive
I understand.
about their desire for sidewalks.
Sure.
So we certainly respect their desires as staff.
And we can put a note on there that they could be done at time of construction on the new lot. You know, that could be done.
Yeah, and that's probably the planning commission they'll probably be acceptable to that.
Okay. The other, I guess the big question is about the provide flow model data. I mean, City of Daphne do they have that, Richard? I don't think so. That's a problem we have with Montrose, is that when they put that water line in, they did not put it for fire flow other than on Main Street, because that's the only large line they have.
So Seth, just to clarify, so this is Daphne Utilities water, but Fairhope Utilities sewer?
They're gonna have individual septic tank.
Okay,
Sewer is on Main Street. They could put in a grinder and pump it 600 feet or more, but from the corner, it's 600 feet. Then we'd have to do a bore underneath Main Street to get to the City of Fairhope sewer line that's there.
okay. So I'm assuming the lot size here is large enough to allow septic,
Yeah.
if otherwise
yeah.
approved by the health department?
Yeah, it
Okay.
will be.
Okay.
We've already done the perk test. It's a good sandy soil. They shouldn't have any problem with a drain field in that
Okay.
area.
I am certain Daphne Utilities can provide at least a letter, can at least provide some correspondence about their flow characteristics. So,
We'll
and
ask for that.
yeah, so I'd contact Bobby Purvis with Daphne Utilities. I'm sure they'll be able to provide that.
Sure.
And Seth, have we located where the closest fire hydrant is?
The closest fire hydrant is at Adams in Maine. And yes, that's more than 450 feet away. And again, that's what I was trying to say about the only main they have is on Main Street. They do not have any other fire hydrants in,
So what, there's probably just a 2-inch line coming up from Maine?
I believe so.
So Seth, looking at the plat, Lot 2 is 17,298 square feet.
Yes, sir.
So the requirement for septic service is 20,000 square feet.
Yes and no. They have, as long as you have city water out there, and you can show an engineered drawing that you can provide a house, septic tank, drain field, 2 lots, you can do as small as 15,000 square feet, but you have to demonstrate that to the health department. Typically, they would rather you have a half-acre lot, but I do know that they will allow a 15,000 square foot lot.
Okay. Can we get some correspondence from the health department to that effect?
I'll be glad to get that for you.
Okay.
And that's all that I have, Mr. Moore. Just keep in mind that those revisions will need to be to us by 9 a.m. on Wednesday, November 13th.
And
Okay.
Buford, will there be a waiver required about the fire hydrant?
Yes, that's correct. And then, Emily, we have sufficient time to advertise requests for waivers?
It's based on the
Oh,
deadline.
it's based upon, okay, very good, very good. So yes, Seth, make that a written request for a waiver on the fire hydrant issue. Give us a brief narrative explaining the scenario, so that way we can evaluate that. But
Sure.
that way, if it is, if it is the pleasure of the planning commission to approve that waiver, we know we've got it properly advertised.
Okay. All right.
And Seth, just again, real quick, so, of course, the Fairhope requirement being 450 feet, how much farther beyond are we in this area?
Well, from the corner of Second and Adams, it's 600 feet.
Okay,
Well, 650 feet.
okay, so we're about 150 feet short as far as a regulatory compliance standpoint. Okay, all right,
Well, from the northwest corner of Lot 1, you're very close to
Okay.
being within 450 feet, but Lot 2, you are not.
okay. Okay, this is in fire protections provided, actual firefighting protections provided by Fairhope Volunteer Fire Department in this area?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's within the police jurisdiction, so.
Okay, okay. All right, yes, sir, yeah, make that a request for waiver.
Okay. We can do that.
All right,
That's all I have.
thank you, Samara. So
Thank
we'll
you.
move on, thank you, Seth. So we will move on to SD 19.43, and we have a final plat application, and Mr. Mike Jeffries.
This is a final plat application for the Tracery subdivision. The engineer of record is Jason Estes with Dewberry Engineering. He's not with us here today. I have been in correspondence with him and the contractors working on site. It's a final plat for Tracery. It's a fairly routine. Went out there and visited the site yesterday actually with Mr. Johnson. Some of the comments that we had from Public Works when their inspection were a few drain boxes needed some regrouting and grout work on that. Those have all been marked with white paint and correspondence back to Dewberry and to Cunningham Delaney. The contractor working for that has been made. Had some comments from our code enforcement officer. Kim Burmeister went out and inspected the site. Overall, there were some spots that hadn't quite reached the 90% vegetation, and some of the stabilization needed to be done in some areas. While I was out there, I noticed they had just put in an irrigation system. The sprinkler heads were not yet installed. So I'm sure that is coming once they finish that irrigation system. Some of those areas will be cleaned up. Then the aerator in the pond has not been installed yet. There was some small debris in the pond, some sediment buildup in and near around some of the outlets and in the gutters. And while I was out there on Tuesday as well, saw a couple guys out there with shovels that were cleaning up the streets and getting some of that loose debris out of the roadway and out of those gutter systems. There was a silt fence in one area that needed some attention, but their wetland buffer signs have all been put up and inspected. They are all accounted for and in place. Wetland buffer is in good shape. Some clarification to make sure that the side of the wetland buffer has been seeded. There was some mulch down and some vegetation starting to grow. Kim just wanted some reassurance that there had been some other seed thrown down to ensure adequate on that slope to prevent any erosion or sloughing off on that. After this meeting, I'm going to see if we had any other works from our water and sewer department on their connections and things they have out there. And then I'm going to get a complete list back over to Jason and the people he is working with to complete the punch list for this final subdivision.
Very good, Mike, very
And-
good.
And
so,
Buford, if I could, I got
Yeah.
a question from Mr. Peterson, because he may or may not know this. When we went out and visited yesterday, it looked like they had just finished running some type of utility run from Gayfer up Lawrence to the new neighborhood. The whole ditch had been regraded, so it was nicely graded. Are they gonna sod that? Do you know what, because that needs to be, probably sodded sooner than later, because the whole ditch line was disturbed and regraded from Gayfer Extension to the new entrance of the subdivision.
I'm sure they'll do whatever the plans call for them to do with the final product of that's the force main coming from the lift station, going out, actually, Gayfer Road to, Plantation.
Okay.
I can't tell you the street, but anyway, that should be, the plan should call for whatever they're gonna do to provide erosion control measures out there, and I don't know what that is, but I'll find out.
Well, and just my curiosity, I mean, the work looked good, don't misunderstand, but those are also people's front yards, even though it's right away. And, I'm not sure seed and mulch would be the best procedure there. I think to go ahead and resod it would finish the product.
yeah, so Richard, you've got a side slope that really needs to be sodded,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah.
And we
All
have
right.
rain coming.
Yeah, we do have rain coming, so I tell you what, Mike, if you'd add
I
that
got
to your
that.
punch list.
I got that down.
Very, very good, very good. And then, Mike, what you can also do, and what I'm probably going to do on the case we're about to discuss, is that I always put a standard, I usually put a standard condition of approval disclaimer that we sign plats after punch list items are handled. Very good. Mike, anything else on that case?
That is all I have.
All right, very good. We'll move on to the next case, which is also a final plat, and this is SD 19.44, and this is Firethorn Development, Phase 5 of Firethorn, and Dewberry Engineers is the engineer of record. And this is also known as Greenbrier at Firethorn. This is a 30-lot subdivision, and similar to Tracery that we discussed earlier, Mr. Jason Estes is the engineer of record. And Jason isn't with us today, but this is a very, at this meeting, but this is a very straightforward final plat approval. And Jason, if you're watching or listening to the recording, we do have some minor sewer issues, and thanks to Tom Jones and Curtis Cooper for punching those items out for me. That'll be reflected in the review comments letter that we'll send out later on today. This one is very simple because we don't have a lift station. The drainage system for this one is handled by the other phases within the development. So this one's very, very simple and very straightforward. So appreciate all the help with staff on that. And I'm handling that case right there. So we'll move over to ZC 19.17, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Hunter Simmons.
Do you want to discuss?
I am very sorry, I'm very, very sorry. Thank you, Hunter. So item F on our agenda, resolution for family subdivisions, and what the intent there is in the subdivision regulations. We have some confusion about family subdivisions that are allowed by Baldwin County. Because Fairhope's planning jurisdiction is quite large, it's very routine for this department to process subdivision cases for areas that are not within the city of Fairhope that fall under both Fairhope and Baldwin County regulations. Baldwin County has a family subdivision process. What we are contemplating and what we'll have for discussion during the December meeting of the Planning Commission is just discuss with the Planning Commission possibly creating a family subdivision process. I think that what I can say here is that I think we still have a process that goes through the Fairhope Planning Commission, but does recognize some of the facets of a family subdivision in the county. And so we'll have more information in that and a more detailed discussion in the December Planning Commission meeting. We won't have it on the agenda for consideration. Discuss it in December and hopefully have an actual amendment to the subdivision regulations that we can discuss in January. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Buford. ZC 1917 is a continuation of some zoning amendments that we proposed this previous Planning Commission meeting. And it's carryover of two items, definition and limitations on non-conforming structures, and then also the creation of a master development plan for PUDs that will kind of change the governing document over PUDs to make make it a little more efficient for staff to review cases, to find things in the future, and the applicants to come in and get questions answered. So that's the primary goal on those requirements. And related, I'm going to jump right into ZC 1918. It's another zoning amendment that we're contemplating that will require a survey, a recent survey, done in the past year for BOA cases, the Board of Adjustment cases. When we create a variance, it creates a new setback, and I believe we need some more firmer dimensions that will be provided by a survey than some of the applications we're currently receiving, because we are requiring now a legal zoning change. So we'll propose that amendment as well. So thank you, Buford.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. And I owe Miss Emily Boyette an apology. I forgot to remind her about an item we discussed on this past Monday night's Planning Commission meeting, which was November 4th. And we had an item on the agenda for discussion, and it was for an amendment to the subdivision regulations regarding multiple occupancy projects. And so anyone watching this meeting, I'd direct them back to the Monday, November 4th meeting during old new business. But just to recap it very briefly here, what the desire of staff is to request the Planning Commission amend the subdivision regulations so that way we have a final plat process for multiple occupancy projects. MOPs are a type of subdivision. Even though we're not dividing land, we're making it's basically a one-lot subdivision. As odd as that sounds, it's procedurally what occurs. There are so many documents and so many closeout requirements for an MOP that the best and most straightforward way to make certain that everything is handled properly and handled in a prudent time manner is to go through a final plat process. And so we discussed it ad length at that meeting, like I said, and our intention is to have that on the agenda for consideration for the December meeting. And then we'll conclude today's meeting. We have some, what we will have under old new business. Under old new business for the December meeting, we have at least 5 subdivisions where there's requests for extensions of the final plat approval. And these all appear to be routine considerations. This is something that we do routinely consider from time to time, that a developer, for various reasons, needs a time extension on finishing a subdivision and the time it takes to go through the final plat process, as well as to get the final plat approved and recorded. And so, Emily, if there's any specific comments, if you have any specific comments or anything that we can help you with at the staff level, just let us know.
Thank you.
And one other thing to add to old new business, just because, and it's a continuing conversation. At this time, I don't think we'll have anything to discuss, but I do want to make sure Greeno is on there, because we will be asking the council to extend the moratorium. Depending on how that goes, we may or may not need to address something on the council, so I'd like to leave that on the old new business without plans to have any presentation at this point in time, but that may change between now and in the meeting.
Right. Well, very good. So any other comments or issues from staff? Very good. So audience? Very good. Well, we stand adjourned. Thank you for everyone for attending today.